In 1959, two Albanian soldiers crossed the border into Yugoslavia carrying Soviet rifles. This story starts there, not with a founder in a rented workshop, but with a factory in central Serbia that had no license to build the weapon it needed, no drawings, no technical data package, no permission, and no ally willing to give it any. 11 years earlier, Tito had broken with Stalin, and Yugoslavia had refused the Warsaw Pact. Every other factory in the Eastern Bloc was simply handed the Kalashnikov. Kragujevac was handed nothing, so the engineers took the defectors' rifles to a bench and cast them in metal, trying to read a design out of the shape of it. It wasn't enough, not even close. What they eventually built out of that failure sits on American gun store shelves right now. Almost none of how it got there was decided in Kragujevac. The factory was older than most of the governments that would later try to close it. On the 27th of October 1853 in Kragujevac, then the capital of Serbia, a foundry called the Topolivnica cast its first barrels, 4 small cannons, and 2 howitzers. Prince Alexander Kragujevac had moved the works from Belgrade 2 years earlier, and a French engineer, Charles Lubry, ran it. Serbia's first steam engines arrived here, not in the capital. A technical school opened in 1854, built to manufacture workers for a single employer. By the eve of the Second World War, the company's own history claims some 12,000 people worked there, across 10,000 machines. Kragujevac was not a town with a factory in it. It was a factory with a town around it. It would be occupied, nationalized, sanctioned, and eventually bombed. It never moved. Then came 1948. Tito broke with Stalin, and Yugoslavia stepped out of the Soviet orbit without stepping into anyone else's. As politics, it was extraordinary. On the factory floor, it was a catastrophe with a very precise shape. The engineers knew exactly which rifle they needed. They could not buy it, could not license it, could not be taught it, so they waited for it to walk across the border. It arrived in 1959 in the hands of 2 men who had decided to stop being Albanian soldiers. A casting gives you a shape. It doesn't give you steel composition, heat treatment, or tolerances. According to later accounts, more Kalashnikovs were quietly acquired from a country receiving Soviet aid. Egypt is the name usually attached, though that part of the record is thinner than the retelling suggests. What can be documented is simpler. By 1964, there were enough rifles on the bench to work it out. They called the result the M64. 6 years later, the Yugoslav People's Army adopted its successor, the M70. You can see the guesswork on those early rifles. The serial numbers were stamped above the magazine well, not where the Soviets put them. The signature of a factory reverse engineering an entire weapon system with nobody to check its work. And the rifle came out heavier than the one they copied. That was not a mistake. Why it was heavier is the strangest fact in this story, and I'll get to it shortly. If this is the kind of thing you're here for, like the video and subscribe, because what happened to this factory next was decided 4,000 miles away. Yugoslav Doctrine did not assume an invasion from the West. It assumed an invasion from either direction. NATO or the Warsaw Pact, take your pick. The country planned to be overrun and to keep fighting anyway, for years from the hills. That meant an infantry rifle that could be buried, cached, dug up, and used to launch rifle grenades by men who might never see a supply depot again. So Zastava built for that. A standard AKM receiver is stamped from roughly 1 millimeter of sheet steel. Zastava's is 1.5. The front trunnion, the block anchoring barrel to receiver, was borrowed from the RPK machine gun, which is why a Yugoslav Kalashnikov carries that unmistakable bulge beneath the bolt handle. And the barrels were deliberately left without chrome lining, a conscious trade of corrosion resistance for accuracy, made by engineers who knew precisely what they were giving up. None of that was craftsmanship exactly. It was fear expressed in steel. They built more than 4 million of them. Then the country they were built for stopped existing. The wars came. With them came United Nations sanctions in 1992, more in 1998, and hyperinflation that made the currency worthless by the afternoon. A factory that had exported around the world was reduced to selling to its own army. Then, in March 1999, NATO began bombing. What the Zastava workers did next is hard to explain to anyone who has never lived in a company town. They stayed. They occupied the plant around the clock, published an open letter, and gave out the factory's coordinates, daring the Alliance to strike a building they were standing inside. They invoked 1941 by name, the October, when German troops shot thousands of the town's men and boys in the woods at Sumaris. That is the memory Kragujevac carries. The strikes came on the 9th of April and again on the 12th of April. The workers' own statement afterward contained one line that says everything about what they had tried. The live shield was broken through. 124 people were injured. None were killed. The power station went down with the factory, and it was the same station that heated the city's hospitals. Within 20 years, the children of the countries that dropped those bombs would be the factory's best customers. The turn in this story happened somewhere no one in Kragujevac had any say over. On July 16, 2014, the United States Treasury added Kalashnikov Concern, the Russian state maker of the original rifle, to its sanctions list over Russia's actions in Ukraine. Russian Kalashnikovs stopped entering the United States. On September 7, 2021, the State Department went further, banning Russian firearms and ammunition outright. In 2013, 204,788 firearms were imported from Russia into America. After the ban, none. The largest civilian firearms market on Earth suddenly had a hole in it shaped exactly like a Kalashnikov, and the factory best placed to fill it was the one that had spent 60 years perfecting a rifle it was never allowed to license. Zastava did not win America. America was vacated for it. A quarrel with Moscow forced Kragujevac to build the rifle in 1948. A different quarrel with Moscow handed it the buyers in 2014. Nobody in Kragujevac was asked about either. The American channel had run for years through third-party importers. To satisfy a U.S. sporting purposes test, rifles arrived in configurations they were never designed for and were reworked on American benches. Done in a hurry, it showed. Loose magazines, feeding failures, a great factory's name on rifles it had not finished. So, in January 2019, at the SHOT Show, Zastava fired its importer. It opened Zastava Arms USA in Des Plaines, Illinois, under a CEO named Ranko Ristic, and took its own name back. And here the story turns on itself. The rifle American buyers now call the most authentic Kalashnikov on the market is, in specific and documented ways, not the rifle Yugoslavia made. The ZPAP M70 has a chrome-lined barrel. The Army's M70 did not. That was the entire point, the deliberate trade its engineers made. The grenade sight and gas cutoff are gone from the civilian model, which means the single reason that receiver is thick and that trunnion is bulged has been removed from the rifle. Those features exist to protect. Import law requires American parts, so there is American walnut on it and American components inside. On the surface, buyers are getting a piece of Yugoslav military history. Underneath, they are buying armor built for a war that was never fought, wrapped around a rifle that no longer does the job the armor was for. And the honest part is this: the new rifles are, by most measures, better. The chrome lining fixed a real corrosion problem. Factory assembly fixed the wobble the importers left behind. The purists who insist the military guns are the real thing are right. So are the people who say the new ones are better made. On June 23, 2025, the President of Serbia, Aleksandar Vučić, halted all Serbian arms exports. "We've halted literally everything," he said. Moscow had been applying pressure over Serbian ammunition surfacing in Ukraine, and Belgrade blinked. The ban covered hunting and sporting rifles, too. Zastava Arms USA sold out of the ZPAP M70, and found itself publicly appealing to the government that owns its parent company, pointing out that the guns in question were being sold to American deer hunters. It took roughly 5 months to win an exception, granted shipment by shipment, subject to review. The first rifles landed into a 35% American tariff, which pushed retail prices up about 15%. America's favorite budget, a K, gets less budget every year for reasons that have nothing to do with the men who build it. 2,315 people still work at Zastava Arms, at Kosovska 4 in Kragujevac. Across town, the other half of the old Red Flag complex, the half that built the Yugo, now assembles electric cars for Stellantis. They started with 2 rifles on a bench in a country forbidden to buy them. They have built more than 4 million since, and they have still never once decided where a single one of them goes. Berlin decided in 1941, Moscow in 1948, the United Nations in 1992, NATO in 1999, Washington in 2014, Belgrade in 2025, always somewhere else, always by someone who never stood on that floor. So tell me in the comments, is the rifle on the shelf today the real thing, or a souvenir of a rifle that doesn't exist anymore? Like the video, subscribe if you want more of these, and I'll see you in the next one.